Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Kyle's Corner. It's coming a little late because I had technical difficulties. Sometimes it happens. My guest today is a relatively new booktuber that many of you probably don't know, but I've been really excited to check out her content. It is Becky Does Blog. She recently got into the fantasy sphere, primarily reading A Song of Ice and Fire, and now she's kind of starting to branch out, but I'm sure she can tell you about it. Becky, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
Oh, fantastic. Um,
Yeah.
what are you reading right now?
At the moment, I'm reading The Shining, so as
Oh, exciting.
far away from A Song of Ice and Fire as you can possibly get. But obviously, like we've spoken about before, I've just started reading Stephen King for the first time, and this is book number two that I'm on, and really enjoying it so far.
That's exciting. How far into it are you?
I think Goodreads said I was 36%, which is very specific, but so far so good. Not much has
Nice, nice.
happened.
Yeah, like The Shining is more of like a slow build type of thing.
Yeah, I'm getting that vibe from it so far. I mean, it's not a bad thing. Like, I wouldn't say it's like unnecessary filler. It is all relevant so far, but it's just like a very slow, gradual pace. But I'm hoping that that means the tense parts are going to hit me harder. I think they're going to be more impactful.
Yeah, I think that usually helps set up the dread. And The Shining, I read when I was maybe 16, and it was like one of the scariest novels I've ever read. So
Oh, okay.
yeah,
So I'm in for a ride then.
yeah, hopefully. Tanner just finished it. Tanner's a good friend of mine. Just finished The Shining a few days ago. Amazing book. Tanner's a big Stephen King fan as well.
Oh,
And
good.
he was assuming that I was reading books before the stream. Haha. So going through your content, I noticed that you kind of recently switched to BookTube, but you actually have been a YouTuber for quite a while. So I guess my first question is that I'm kind of curious what made you decide to make the change? Because you were kind of like a lifestyle vlogger before,
Yeah.
and then now recently you're more into the BookTube space.
Yeah, so I think I don't know what I was doing before. It was all kind of a mix of anything and everything, to be honest. Whatever I felt like filming that day, I would get up and film. But I just kind of felt like I wasn't really passionate about that enough because I didn't really have
Hmm.
any idea as to what I wanted to speak about. So I kind of went through a lull for a bit of a few months with my YouTube. And then I read A Song of Ice and Fire and finished the whole series. And when you finish that book series, you can't explain it. You can't just sit there with the feelings. You've got to share them. Like, how can you
Hmm.
finish that book series and not talk about it? So that was the decision that I made. Was like today I'm gonna sit and film my book series review for A Song of Ice and Fire. And since then, after filming that video, I just felt like I really enjoyed that, like a lot more than filming any of my lifestyle stuff. And don't get me wrong, I've always enjoyed filming for YouTube. It's such a fun thing to do. It's so therapeutic. But there was just something about talking about books in particular that yeah, it hit me different. So that's kind of where it all spiraled from, just reading books, enjoying and maybe not enjoying some books, but feeling like I want to share those opinions on the internet. And it's nice to hear from other people's points of view to see how they feel about those books as
Hmm.
well. Even if people disagree, it's nice to get a conversation going. And it's just so wholesome talking about books, let's be honest.
Oh yeah, and then that's the best part about this community is like, I barely ever come across a book that I don't know a couple people that have read, so you can discuss it and find out what they like and what they didn't like and stuff. Tanner, she has just finished the entire Song of Ice and Fire, Red Fire and Blood and everything. And correct me if I'm wrong, you went into it unspoiled, right? Like, did you have any
Yeah,
spoilers?
I am so lucky because I avoided all spoilers, which meant all the big stuff that happens I didn't expect, and I feel so lucky that that happened
That's
for me.
that's amazing. I'm so jealous. I mean, well, okay, so I read it. I watched the first episode of the show when it aired, and then I was like, "Oh, seems really cool," and I went out and bought the first book, and I had finished the first 4 books, by the time the 4th episode aired, so I just, like, binged them, and
Wow.
then but I got spoiled on, uh, I mean, the Red Wedding, so I guess people know that the Red Wedding is a thing you can get spoiled
Yeah,
on, so that
definitely.
was that was a shame, but, yeah, no, that first time through, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, you are
Um,
right. And naturally, to be honest, I'd heard of the red wedding as a phrase, but I didn't know what it was. So I avoided, because like the algorithms on like Facebook, Instagram, they all come up with like memes. And every time I saw a meme that I thought was about A Song of Ice and Fire, I quickly scrolled past. I was like, I'm not even looking at that. I'm not even going to glimpse at it for a second. And so I'd heard certain phrases about certain things, but I didn't know what they were about. So I'm really, yeah, I'm proud of myself. I managed to avoid them all.
so that's interesting. So like I have a friend named Bookborn who recently went through the series for the first time, and she was also unspoiled. But she would see things and then just not care because she thought she was never going to read them. But it sounds like you were specifically
Ah,
trying to avoid. So you thought you were going to read it someday, and it just now is the time, or like what motivated you
yeah.
to finally pick it up?
So I kind of knew it was inevitable that I was at some point going to read it, but there were parts where I was thinking, is there any point? Because it is going to get spoiled for me. I may as well just, read all the spoilers and then watch the TV show. But then I thought, no, I don't want to do that to myself. Like I want to read it and I want to enjoy it. And if things do get spoiled for me, then I'll just have to try and process that at the time. But obviously that wasn't the case. I think I think the thing that was putting me off reading them for so long was because they're so big. Like that it's such an intricate world that George R. R.
Yeah.
Martin has created. And I knew that if I was going into it, I needed to put all my focus and all of my attention into it and proper be immersed. So I was waiting for a part in my life where I felt like I had that space and that capacity to
Right.
do so. So I timed it well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm the same way. I remember a few. I mean, I read A Song of Ice and Fire a long time ago, but even having completed that big series, I would see something like The Wheel of Time, which is 14 books, and I'm like, I'm never reading those.
Wow.
And then now I have, but like it's like you got to build up the time and space to do that. And I
Yeah.
agree with what Matt's saying here. He said, luckily the books have so many surprising moments that it's almost impossible to get fully spoiled on, even if you hear some relatively big spoilers. I think that's a big thing too, which is like the series is so well written that even if you technically know an event, like you're gonna get enjoyment from it from some other avenue. So there's always something there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like there is so much to it. Like there's so many intricate details that even like the smaller plots, even they can go down a different route that you were completely not expecting. And things that people
Hmm.
don't really talk about and things that people don't really turn into memes. Like even some of those smaller storylines, they still impact you and they still have a massive like that gasp moment thinking, goodness, I didn't expect that to happen. And I found that obviously the whole way through, but even for the smaller things that people don't really talk about much, yeah, it was just completely unexpected. What a journey. What a wild
Yeah.
ride that series is.
Yeah, I'm so. I will tell everybody this episode is going to be a little bit different. Near the end, we're actually going to go into A Song of Ice and Fire spoilers because I want to pick Becky's brain about more specific things. And I think most people would be willing to stay around for that because it's a very popular series. But we will keep it towards the end, just so anybody who doesn't want to be spoiled can leave without having to be spoiled. But I'm really excited to talk to you about more specifics. But even just on like on a more general broad, what were some of the characters that you liked the most in the series? Like what really stuck out to you?
Oh, some of the characters I like the most. I mean, this is probably a very generic answer, but it's got to be Tyrion, Tyrion
Yeah,
Lannister,
generic for a
because
reason. It's the correct
yeah,
answer.
a
Yeah.
very, very viable reason.
Yeah.
And I think it because it is the way that the chapters are written and his point of view is just a very distinct one. It's very different from a lot of the other characters. If I'm being honest, when I was first reading the book, there were quite a few side characters that felt like they all blended together for me, and I found it quite hard to distinguish between them all. But then there's certain ones that do really stand out because they've got such character, such personality, and obviously Tyrion is one of those. Um, I don't know if this one is a little bit of a controversial one or not because said this to some friends the other day and they all disagreed with me. But I really like Arya Stark.
Oh, your
Um,
friends are weird. She's very popular.
oh,
I mean,
good.
she happens to be like one of my top 3, but I would tell you whether or not she was popular even if she wasn't. But I would say she's one of the more popular characters for sure.
Oh, good. I'm glad about that because I don't really know what is popular and like what's like
Yeah,
the
that's
popular
that's so
viewpoint.
nice that you've just like missed the whole bubble, like you just have
Yeah,
your own opinions. It's so cool.
yeah. But I mean, sometimes that's a good thing and sometimes it's a bad thing on the internet.
Well, you did ranked. So actually, I will tell you, I I found your channel from your, I think it was your Clash of Kings vlog, and I watched that one, and then I knew that I wanted to get you on the channel to talk about this. so I didn't watch any of your other vlogs. So I actually don't know any of your Song of Ice and Fire opinions except your ranking,
Hmm.
which is sacrilege. It's absolutely not okay.
Okay, hit me. Tell me why.
Storm of Swords is like fourth. Like that's crazy. Why would you do that to me?
Right, let me defend myself. So even in my ranking video, I did say I feel like so uncomfortable saying these words that in fourth place is Storm of Swords because it does feel a little bit too low when you say fourth. But I mean, I wouldn't change it because I like what I put above it. So if there was like if you could have all the books as third, which obviously you can't do, but if you could have them all at the same, then that is what I would do. I'd have them all third, and then I have like my top two. But yeah, sorry, it's at fourth for me.
That's okay. Reread will hit you better, I think.
I think
But
so.
your number one. Do you want to tell people what your number one was? Because it is a bit unorthodox, but I think it's pretty cool.
So is this number one in the core series or number one out of all of
All
them
total.
total? So
Yeah,
favorite out of all of them in the universe is A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. That is It was a five out of five-star read for me, can't lie. I'm authentic, but I
yeah.
just
Oh
loved
no,
everything
I
about it.
love Dunkin' Egg. It is not okay. So I love Dunkin' Egg. I tend to feel that my love from that is also so connected to the main series that I can't rank it like above one of the main series. But I
Mhm.
think like those novellas are just so good, so packed with like rich storytelling in such a small amount of pages and like great characters. What do you think it was that put that above the other books for you?
So, I think I think it was the writing style. Now, I do love George R. R. Martin's writing style. He's undoubtedly a brilliant author,
Mhm.
but I think one of his particular strengths is that he can change and adapt his writing style to be. It's like you're reading completely different authors, but it's his world. Like the writing style in the core books compared to A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, and then compared to Fire and Blood, like they're just so different from each other. And I felt like as I was reading the Duncan Egg novellas, I felt like a little bit more humor than he normally puts in A Song of Ice and Fire, which is fine because I don't read a book to laugh. If I'm being honest, I read it to feel impacted and to get invested in that world. But as I was reading those novellas, I was just smiling like the whole way through. And I just think that the storylines are so intricate, the history that he's interwoven in there as well. I just I just can't deny it. I just loved it.
Awesome. No, it's super cool that you like it the most. I have a friend, Jimmy from the Fantasy Network. I think he ranks that his favorite too. He says that he does, but I've never actually seen him like do a ranking where he like
Mm,
put. But like, so there are people out there that put that first, and it's a fantastic collection.
yeah,
I
it
saw a
really is.
question up here though earlier of Robert Stannis or Renly.
I think it's gotta be Stannis. He is
There
the
you go,
the one
Stannis
true
the
king.
Menace.
He is. There's
Yeah,
no denying
exactly.
it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You're gonna make a lot of people happy with that.
Oh, good.
I assume you're like counting down the days for like the TV show. Then, are you excited for that?
Oh, I am, and I'm also really scared because I really want them to do it justice. And if I'm being honest, I mean, if we talk about Rings of Power, I mean, that did not do Lord of the Rings any justice at all.
No, it absolutely didn't.
So I'm just scared.
That's fair. I have faith in them because even so, like uh, House of the Dragon season two, I didn't love as much, but I still really liked it. And that was during a writer's strike, and they got their episode cut at the last minute. Like I'm
Mm,
forgiving of the reasons that that one wasn't quite as strong, but generally speaking, they've taken a lot of care with the sequel stuff. And Duncan Egg just seems like such a good thing to adapt. Like
yeah.
it's going to be lower stakes, and as long as they nail the casting, is going to be fantastic. I think I'm very excited. I'm more optimistic for this than I was for House of the Dragon.
Yeah, and I think as well it has to be better than season 2 of House of the Dragon. Surely. I mean that I wasn't like disappointed in it, but I kind of was, if we're putting it lightly.
The internet's already turning you to haterism, Becky.
I'm not a hater on most things. I'm generally like I like to
Mm.
give the benefit of the doubt to a lot of things and try and look for positives where I can, but I just yeah, I felt a bit unfulfilled after that,
I
to
think
say
that's
the
fair.
least.
It's very common to feel unfulfilled after that season. We needed a few more episodes
Yeah,
to kind of bring it together.
definitely.
Moving off of A Song of Ice and Fire for a little bit, what did you read prior to that? Like, what was your foundations in reading? Like, what got you into it?
So, prior to A Song of Ice and Fire, goodness, what did I read? I'd have to go back on my Goodreads and see. It feels like so long ago. I read a mix of everything. Other than horror, obviously, this is like the first time that I've ever read horror through Stephen King. But oh, that's a good thing actually. One thing that's really, really popular at the moment, but is not for the right reasons, is ACOTAR. That's what I read before A Song of Ice and Fire. So I suppose more the romantasy
Oh yeah.
side.
So would you
Um,
say that that was your gateway into fantasy?
I think so. I read fantasy more when I was younger, but again, they were tailored more towards children and young
Right.
adults. So like Harry Potter, for example. I mean, you can enjoy that and love that as an adult, but I feel like at the time, the author was
Right.
not really directing it towards adults, if that makes sense. So I read it around the time of publication, I feel like. So I suppose that was like, if you class that as fantasy, that I suppose was my first introduction to it. But then I kind of stopped for a while. And I suppose for like a good few years during university, all I was reading was psychology textbooks. But like I was reading that for fun, which I would never do
Right.
now. And that is completely different to anything fantasy. Um, and then again, it went into romance, and then it went into romantasy, and then it went into fantasy this year. And I feel like this has been the year of getting back into fantasy again and not wanting to read anything else because it's just been such a fulfilling year because of it. So yeah, I'm glad I've leaped back into it again.
That's awesome. I always say, like, I have a bunch of friends that have never touched fantasy in their life, and they're reading ACOTAR or Throne of Glass now. And maybe they'll become big fantasy readers, or maybe they'll just read that series and then realize they don't dislike fantasy
Mm,
as much, and that's also fine. Like, it's such a
yeah,
good gateway. And I read A Court of Thorns and Roses last month, and it's okay. It's fine. Like,
I think that's
I
good
knew that I
opinion.
wouldn't love it, but
Yeah.
like it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but it was like, oh yeah, this is fine. Like,
Yeah, it's not terrible.
yeah.
But it's also not groundbreaking. And I feel like at the moment, the opinion online from a lot of people is they're calling it like revolutionary, calling it groundbreaking. It's just okay. Like it was an enjoyable read, but it's just okay to me anyway.
Did you finish that series?
Yeah, I finished the whole
Yeah,
series.
yeah.
Did you, or just the first book?
No, I read the first one, but I have a couple friends that tell me the second one is like where the series kind of like gets good. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll read the second one and then we'll see. But I do think it's important, or important to me, I should say, to try to read stuff that I'm not like thinking that I'm gonna love, because even if I don't
Mm,
like it, I get to see a different style or a different reason why people like it. And now I have that ability to go and talk to my friends that have read it and be like, "Oh, I know what you like about this," and like, have you tried this or something like that? So,
yeah, I think that's great to always keep open-minded, and
yeah.
as well, I think that's how I found a load of books that I love is just through picking them up and not really thinking too much about it, not really knowing whether or not I was going to love it, and then afterwards it surprises me because I really, really love the stories, and initially I didn't really have many expectations, so I feel like that's a nice perspective to have.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people in the comments are talking about good adaptations. So I'll pose you the question: what is an adaptation of a book that you thought was better than the movie? Do you have one,
Better than
or even just as good? Like it lived up to the movie, or that lived up to the book.
so the first thing that does come to mind is the Harry Potter movies because I rewatch them over and over again, and I do genuinely believe that they are brilliant adaptations for the books. Um, they're not. I mean, they do miss out things, but you can't put the whole context of the book into a movie. Um, but I do feel like they did pretty well, and I think that they're great movies as well. Even if you've not read the books, they're just really enjoyable. Um, what else is a good adaptation?
Soon you're gonna be able to say The Shining. The Shining. You haven't watched the movie, right?
No, no,
Oh,
I
okay.
haven't. So again, no spoilers. I haven't. I don't know how it's
Oh,
going to end. I don't know what
yeah,
happens.
no. So Stephen King. So here's what I'll say, because when you go into the watch, I assume you're gonna watch the movie if you like the book.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
definitely.
So Stephen King did not like Stanley Kubrick's movie. Famously, and it was a younger Stephen King. I have a feeling Stephen King now dislikes a lot of his adaptations, but he's just gotten older and wiser, and he doesn't say so.
Mm,
But this was like a young Stephen King that I think hadn't learned that lesson, and he just trashed The Shining. He was just like, he misunderstood my book. This was ridiculous, and he actually like got like a made for TV movie, The Shining, that he wrote himself, that people didn't like very much. Now I haven't watched that one, but the reason I tell you that is it's interesting is because I still think The Shining is like an absolutely fantastic movie. Like it's a great horror movie. Like Jack Nicholson's fantastic in it. Shelley Duvall's fantastic in it, but it does change a lot of the core themes of the novel, and I think that's one of the examples. Like I think Tanner said earlier that The Shining movie and book are both equally good, but for different reasons, and I totally agree
Mm,
with that.
that's a
But
good
Stephen King
take.
was mad, so
Was he? Oh, that's such a shame to hear as well, because obviously it's his story. He's
yeah,
published it, and then for him to not be satisfied, was that just a, like you say, a younger version of him as opposed to what you'd say here?
yeah. Didn't you just read Aragon?
I
I
have
feel
just
like I
read it
saw a
again.
spoiler or a review for that. How did you like it? I haven't read it.
Oh, so I was again, I was talking to some friends whilst I was reading it, and I got about two-thirds of the way through, and I said to them, "Would I be crazy if I rated this a 5 stars?" Because at the moment, I can't fault it. Like, I love it. But then towards the end, there were a few things that dipped it down to a 4 stars because there were a couple of flaws at the end. But bottom line is, I really, really enjoyed it. And I went into it thinking it was a children's book, or you know, just targeted towards a younger, age bracket than what I am. But I absolutely loved my time reading Aragon. It was so good. It was so
That's
fun.
awesome.
Just a fun
I
book.
read Percy Jackson this year, and I kind of went in with the same expectations, and I really liked. I think it was like the first and third book. I
Hmm.
think I gave 5 stars. Like I really liked them, and it's not like
That's
the rest of the
good.
series is not good by any means, but like the first book and the third book I thought were really really good, and then like the rest of the books are good. But yeah, those are just for children for sure. Like he's
Are
12,
they?
but it's really like I thought it was a really clever series, and so sometimes it's just regardless of the age it's like intended for, it's still gonna be a good story.
Yeah, I think you've got to forget about those things as well. You can't think too deeply about who it's targeted for. Like if you like a book, then you like a book, regardless of what age you are.
Absolutely. Are there like some? So now that you're getting back into reading fantasy, you've done A Song of Ice and Fire, and you're doing Christopher Paolini. Are there like some big series or authors that you really want to explore in the near future?
Yeah, so Percy Jackson, it's on the bookshelf up there, the whole series. I've got that on my TBR to read. I did watch was it Disney that did like a
Yeah, the
TV
Disney one.
for
It was
that?
good. I liked it.
Yeah, I liked it. So again, I don't know if it spoiled anything for the book. It probably has, but I might have forgotten by the time I read the books what happened in the TV show. But that's definitely on my list to read next. Another author that I really want to read, and somebody that I've heard lots about, is Robin Hobb. So I
Robin
think,
Hobb is on my list to recommend to you. So
oh, list to recommend. Okay,
yeah.
nice, cool. Well,
Um,
that is definitely on
yeah.
my list.
So I have a friend who was a big A Song of Ice and Fire fan before the series came out, and he started reading Robin Hobb because George R. R. Martin and her were really good friends, and so he read Realm of the Elderlings, and that's now his favorite series. But he always talks about how a lot of A Song of Ice and Fire fans would probably find things to like in Robin Hobb, extremely different in a lot of ways. Like, I don't
Mm,
want to say that it's similar to A Song of Ice and Fire. It's absolutely not. The pace for Robin Hobb is way, way different. Most of her books are single point POV following one character. Uh, the politics is way smaller. The magic is way different, but the way that they understand the human condition is very similar, and the way that they explore character development is very good. Robin Hobb is like so George R. R. Martin is my favorite author, but Robin Hobb is top 5. Like, she's right up there, so,
nice. That is a very strong statement. No,
yeah.
it's again, and it's another like series or collection of series that I'm looking forward to just entering that journey and reading it for the first time, because that's something
Mhm.
that you never get back again. So I'm really gonna appreciate it whilst I'm going through that, because they're quite big books as well, I'm pretty sure.
Most of them, yes. Like, the
Yeah.
first one is pretty reasonable. I think Assassin's Apprentice is, like, 400 pages.
All right.
Um, but then Royal Assassin's, like, 650, and then Assassin's Quest is just huge, and then they kinda stay huge after that. Um, and then I haven't actually finished the series yet. I'm halfway through so it's Blood of Dragons is the one I'm reading now, and that's, the 13th book, so I have 3 more after this.
Oh wow. You enjoying
Yeah.
it so far?
I am. So the way that her series works, I don't know how much you know about her. Is
Not
it's
a
broken
lot.
into okay, so it's broken into sub series. So it's kind of nice to stop gaps. So like if you read a trilogy, you can just stop for a while. So the Farseer trilogy is starts with Assassin's Apprentice, and it follows a character named Fitz, who is a royal bastard that's raised in the court, and the family kind of wants him around for what he can provide for the family, but doesn't want to give him his rights as a member of the family. Is kind of a vague way of saying it, and it's about his life. Then she switches entirely to the Live Ship Traders trilogy, which is my favorite trilogy of all time, and
Wow.
it has different characters. It is multi POV instead of single first person narration, and it is about these traders that they have ships called live ships where if 3 generations of a family member has died on the ship then becomes alive with the memories of the person and also like magic. So the ship mast literally can talk, and then like it because of the wood is special, they can go trading in places that other people can't. So they're really prized possessions.
That's cool.
And there's like pirates trying to like steal one of them. It's just such a good character series and also so cool. But then she goes back to Fitz with the Tawny Man trilogy, and then the one I'm reading now is the Rain Wilds quartet. So there's 4 books, and people normally say that series isn't very good. Like I hear it like that's the weakest one. Like people don't really like it. Like it's just kind of the like boring filler stuff you have to get to the final trilogy. And I've really liked it. Like it's not as good as the other
Good.
trilogies, that's for sure. But I've really liked it.
Oh, that's good. No, you've made me excited to want to read it. I mean, to be fair, I think was it the Farsia trilogy was recommended as the first one
Yes,
that
that's
should
definitely
be
what you should
read.
try first. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was like an order to read them in to get the best experience, and I'm pretty sure that was what I read online that was recommended. So that yeah, that the first book of that is on my November to BR because again, that's on the bookshelf next to me. So I'm excited to
Very
read that next
exciting.
month. Yeah,
And
it'll be a good one.
I will say, if you don't like Assassin's Apprentice, you can try Ship of Magic. Like they're not connected enough where like it's not like telling the same linear story. You should try if you like Farseer, you should read all of Farseer first. But if you try Assassin's Apprentice, it's just not really like you don't like Fitz or you just find the slow nature of it too much or whatever reason, just try skipping to Ship of Magic and see how you feel about that.
That's good advice. Thank you. I'll bear that in mind.
Yeah. Um I had another question about Robin Hobb, but I forgot it.
You've
So,
been
oh,
waffling on.
yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Derry is gonna yell at me, Evie. We have a friend named Derry who says people should not do what I just said, but she's not here,
Oh,
so
so it doesn't matter.
I am not leading her astray, Tanner. Okay, this is not true. I want her to read Robin Hobb, so I'm.
I will. I will, regardless of what anybody says. I will.
You do you do a lot of audiobooks or do you just do like physical books?
I've never done audiobook in my life, and I only just learnt
Wow.
the other day that with Spotify Premium you get access to some. So I was like, "Oh, do I try it out?" I don't know. I'm set in my ways. I've just always picked up a physical book and read it. Like I've never even had a Kindle or anything like that. Just always physical.
Becky, life is about change. That's what I
Is
think.
it? Is it really? But
um,
why change what ain't broken? That's what I say.
sometimes let me ask you a question. Do you ever do the dishes?
I don't need to. I've got a dishwasher.
Oh, damn. Well, you do some sort of like menial house chore that would be made better by listening to an audiobook. That's what's going on.
But is that not what podcasts are for? Because that is what
No, it's
I
what
listen to.
audiobooks are for. No.
Is it?
Um,
Hmm.
yeah. I actually so I mean I still listen to podcasts, but I listened to podcasts for years and I didn't touch audiobooks. And then it took me like 7 months to listen to my first audiobook. Like I would listen for like 7 minutes and I'd just be like, I need a podcast or something. So, sometimes it takes a little bit. Sometimes
Mm.
people like it right away and sometimes people don't like it. But now that you have the use of the Spotify premium, you should definitely give it a shot.
Yeah, I think it depends who's reading it though. Like, what if you don't like the person's voice, or is that am I just
Well, that's
overthinking?
no, you're absolutely not. So the reason I brought it up in the first place is the narrator of Live Ship Traders is like famously not very good. Like I think our entire
Oh
community
no.
has whole face rejected her. Um, my friend once said Anne Flotsky missed her calling by doing anything else.
Oh, shots
So
fired. That is
yeah,
harsh.
so I was just gonna say if you did listen to audiobooks, I don't recommend the Live Ship Trader. So yeah,
Okay.
who the narrator is super important, and So there's a series that I was going to recommend to you called the First Law series. Have you ever heard of it by Joe Abercrombie?
No, I haven't. No, that's new to me.
Okay. So Joe Abercrombie is kind of like cheekily called Lord Grimdark, because he writes, I mean, obviously grimdark, but he writes books that are very heavily inspired by A Song of Ice and Fire. There's actually a plot line in his second book that I feel like is directly ripped from one of the A Song of Ice and Fire books. But he is, I think, pound for pound, the best character voice writer that I've ever read. And what I mean by that is you can read the first sentence or two of a chapter and you know what character you're following because of how good
Oh,
his narrative voice
I
is.
like stuff like that. I like when they do that.
He's very, very good, and he's extremely funny, and that's why I think he's been so successful. Is that he, like the stuff. So, like some of the main characters are like pretty bad people, quote unquote. Like Glocta is a very big fan favorite, where he was like this like charming general, like Prince Charming type of person, and then he got captured in a previous war and tortured. So now he like walks with a limp, and his like jaw's all messed up, and his eyes saggy, and so now he tortures people because he knows how to hurt people because he's been hurt. So that's like really dark. But Glock is one of the funniest characters I've ever read. And like Joe, I think is maybe the author that's made me laugh the most. His books are so funny, and that's like the common thing everybody has ever says is that like I shouldn't be laughing at this, but it's really funny. And I know you said you don't read books to laugh, but neither do I. And it's just
Yeah,
I think the characters are really good in that series. The way that the world goes is good, but the humor is what makes it tolerable.
yeah.
And the audiobooks are fantastic for that.
Okay. Okay, so if I read through an audiobook, would you recommend that be my first time?
Well, so I always recommend doing a favorite for your first, like something you really
Okay.
like that you haven't read for a while, because, oh, I don't even have to really explain this to you because you know psychology, which is awesome. But did you ever study neuroscience?
A little bit.
A
A little
little bit?
bit.
Okay. Me too, but, okay, so the way your attention works, right? Like, when somebody's talking really slow, your mind's gonna wander,
Mhm.
but then when you get more used to the cadence of the person and, the flow of the person, or, like, I speed it up, then that makes it easier to pay attention to, but if it's already a favorite, it's gonna be easier for you to latch onto. But a first new
Sweet.
audiobook, you could start with Joe Abercrombie.
Okay, so yeah, if I went with a favorite, I'm already invested in it, aren't I? So I'm
Yeah,
already interested, so I can kind of tolerate if I'm not really vibing the audiobook aspect. Okay.
yeah.
What did you say the other one was called? First Law? Was that what it
Yeah, the
was?
series is called
Yeah.
First Law. I'll send you the name so you
Yeah,
see it and
thank
stuff,
you.
but
I'll check that
yeah,
out because again, I like the humor aspect of books, which was something that I wasn't expecting this year. That if there's a book that can make me chuckle or make me smile or laugh a little bit, I don't
yeah.
know. It does something
Yeah,
for me.
I would be surprised. I don't think I've ever seen anybody read I shouldn't say any, probably I have, but 99% of people that read Joe Abercrombie, I hear like, "He's incredibly funny." So,
Mm.
even if
Oh,
he's
that's
not
good.
even if I'm overselling it, I still think he's gonna be funny. So,
Oh, I'm excited. No, that's good. I'll add it to my list.
awesome. Pete wants to know, have you read Discworld?
No, I have not. Should I?
Uh, Discworld is by Terry Pratchett. Um
I've heard of Terry Pratchett before. I'm pretty. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely heard the
so
name.
Discworld is like 46 books or something like that. It's a lot, but they're
46.
all like, um they're like little sub-series and you can kind of pick them up in any order really. Like it's just like a world.
Oh,
And
cool.
they're satire. I personally don't love Terry Pratchett that I've read so far. I've been really trying, like I've read like 4 or 5 and some of them are good, some I'm like, I don't, but people love Terry Pratchett and he
Are they
is
like
very funny.
comical? Like comical,
They
light-hearted,
they
funny
they
kinda.
are comical, but they're biting satire in the sense that like Terry
Okay.
Pratchett. Okay, so even if I don't love Discworld so far, Terry Pratchett is, I think, a genius. Like I'm very comfortable saying that he's a genius because people will quote things that he said, and I'm like, that is so smart and on the nail, and just like understanding of the way the world works, and also funny. Um, I think sometimes that it leans a little bit too far into that and less on the story for me personally that I've read so far. But yeah, he's an incredibly bright writer and like just the social commentary is great. He has like a personification of death that appears in all of his books. And then he has like a sub series about death. It starts with the book Mort, which I haven't read any of those ones yet. But A lot to explore there.
Nice. I'll have to check it out because I'm always open to like exploring new authors and different writing styles. And yeah, I just, like I said, this has been the year of exploring new things for me. Like I said, I'm reading horror at the moment, and I'd never done that before Stephen King. So it's always nice to explore new things and see what you
Really?
think.
I don't think I knew that. I thought because you're rereading Dracula too, right?
Well, in my head, I don't class that as horror, which I know people are.
Interesting.
I know
I'm
it's
pretty
classed as
sure
gothic
he's a
horror.
vampire. Yeah, that's so
No,
I
because right, let me explain. So I think when I think of horror, it doesn't just have to be horror because it's got a vampire. Do you know what I mean? Like you could have a really funny story that's not horror, but it could feature like a vampire. Like a sitcom of vampires wouldn't be horror, would it? It would be a comedy. So in my head, I'm thinking when I read a horror, I want to feel horrified. I want to feel bit scared, bit spooked out. I want to feel like I can't read it in a dark room, or I have to have some kind of safety blanket around me when reading it. That is what I want to feel from a horror. And don't get me wrong, when I read Dracula, I do feel creepy. Like I do feel a bit like on edge, but I wouldn't say I feel horrified. And that is what I want to feel from a horror.
mm,
Am I
okay.
making sense?
You're making sense, but
But I'm wrong.
unfortunately you're wrong. Yeah. So here's the thing. Um, that all makes sense. I'm just kidding around, but uh, you know, horror is always going to be like what actually scares you is always going to be so personal, right? So like
Yeah.
Dracula is undoubtedly like part of the horror genre, but I didn't find it very scary either. Like I think it's good. Like I really liked Dracula, but I
Mm.
wasn't scared by it. Um, but there's always going to be like the tropes. Like I read a horror book that I DNF'd a while ago. It was like called The Rising or something like that,
The
and I got
rise.
like 25% of the way into it, and I was just like, "This is absolutely not going to work for me." Just like the tone of it, and it was about like zombies that were sentient or like whatever. And but that was still like a horror book. It just was so silly to me, the concept.
Mm.
So I think you've read a little bit of horror.
Do you know what? I think I stand corrected. I think I have because, like we say, Dracula is a gothic horror, but so is Frankenstein, and I read that as well, and that is classed as a gothic horror. But I think I forget that they're horror when I'm reading them
For
because
sure. And
to me, I don't feel
Frankenstein,
horror.
yeah, no, and Frankenstein like is very arguably sci-fi. Like I had this conversation just like a couple
Mm.
days ago. Is that Mary Shelley kind of invented um, the way we think of sci-fi? But then with Frankenstein, it just kind of became that he got grouped in with all the horror stuff. So
Yeah, and I think as well it was because it was for around that time as well. Like
yeah,
Frankenstein is an old book,
yeah,
so I think around that time, like we said, it's like that gothic horror that we don't really see these days as well. So I think it was just kind of grouped into that when, like you say, it's probably planted the seeds for new genres that have come out of that now in the modern day.
yeah.
So yeah, maybe I have read some horror.
Frankenstein is absolutely not scary. Like that is for
No.
sure. Like I'm like 0% scared during Frankenstein.
No, it's not. If anything, I think it's just deeply saddening. Like I read
Absolutely.
that
Yeah, it's
book
very
and
sad.
I felt depressed, like more depressed than I have in my entire life after finishing Frankenstein. It's just so deep and it's not scary, but it is
Yeah.
deep.
I totally agree. I'm rereading Frankenstein right now, but I'm only at like chapter 3 because Audible did like a see audiobooks. Audible did like a new version of it, narrated by Jamie Bell. So I thought I would give that a try as like a new way
Yeah.
to. Um,
Good idea.
I just froze here for a second.
Oh, you've
I
frozen on
do
my
hate
screen.
chapters. Oh,
Have I frozen for
can
you?
you guys see me? Hear me?
I can hear you. Becky is fine. Oh, cool. Thank you. Can hear you. Awesome. Oh, it's just me now. Am I still live? Becky, what is the other Stephen King? Oh, I'm still live. Okay, cool. We're on the Becky show. Okay, the other Stephen King book that I read was Salem's Lot. That was my first one. Which again, vampires. Um, and I'm pretty sure the movie came out of that last week, did it not? 1818 or 1831 version of Frankenstein. I'm pretty sure the one that I just read was the 1818 one. I thought it was in this room, but it's not. I didn't know there was an 1831 version. Did it get re-released? Or is that like a movie? Has there ever been a movie for Frankenstein? Well, I wouldn't blame you all if you all left now, because Kyle's the one carrying the show. What did you think? Are you interested in more of King's work? So with Salem's Lot, I did enjoy it. Like I really thought it was a very strong book, but I don't think it is the best that Stephen King has done. So I wouldn't necessarily say that I would recommend it for like a first reader, which I was, because like I mentioned earlier, I'm reading The Shining at the moment, and to me that's already better. Like I'm not even halfway through The Shining, and I'm already really, really enjoying that a lot more. Not to say I didn't like Salem's Lot. I thought it was great. Um, I think one of the main things about Salem's Lot was there was just a lot of unnecessary, maybe not unnecessary, but there was just a lot of like information or like filler per se about characters that I didn't really care about that much, and that took up a huge chunk of the book. Whereas now in The Shining, all of that information is relevant, and I feel like I care about it more. So that's my opinion, which a lot of people probably disagree with. Mary Shelley wrote another version of Frankenstein in 1830. I had no idea about that. The 1818 version is superior. So is it worth me reading the 1830 version? Or should I just stick with my knowledge of the 1818 one? Because I did enjoy the original Frankenstein. Like I thought it was good. So I don't want to then tarnish that by reading like a new later version, if that makes sense, and then not enjoying Frankenstein again.
Okay,
Oh,
Jesus.
you're back.
The internet went out in the whole house. I had to reset
Oh,
the whole thing.
wow.
Sorry about that, everybody.
We've just been talking about Frankenstein and Salem's Lot.
Good, good. Salem's Lot's awesome. It's a great thing to be talking about.
Well, I was just saying, like, it was good, but I don't feel like it would have been the best that King's ever done. I feel like there's
Well,
better books by him, maybe.
maybe you peaked too early. Have you ever thought about that? And
Yeah,
he's
do
one
you
of
think?
that. Salem's Lot is one of my favorites, but I was talking about it recently with somebody, and they were like, "Yeah, I didn't really like the characters, and like I really just liked the town like slowly descending into chaos." I was like, "Yeah, that's kind of what I like about it too." He
Mm,
does write much better characters later on, for sure.
yeah, I think that was my thing. So with Salem's Lot, I genuinely didn't like a single character. And again, you don't have to read a book and like every character. That is, that would be boring if every character was amazing and you had a great personality and you liked them all. That would just be boring. But I feel like for Salem's Lot, there were too many that I really detested with a strong passion. I just was filled with hatred when reading about some of these characters. And that might be a strong
You don't
opinion,
want
but I
you don't
I
want
didn't like
that. Yeah,
anyone.
that's
Yeah,
yeah.
I hated everybody that lives in Jerusalem's Lot. They were just not great people, in my opinion.
Well, a lot of them get turned into vampires, so they should have been better
Yeah,
people.
exactly.
Um,
That's what you get.
I think the strongest character, and it's not a character that I like, but the strongest character in that book to me was Father Callahan, who I think
Hmm.
has the best arc of
Yeah,
the book. But yeah, it's not really filled with likable characters. Like I don't like Susan, I don't like Ben, I do like
I hate
Mark,
Ben. Right,
like
is
the kid.
Mark the little boy? Yes. Okay,
Yeah,
so I like him. I do like him. I always get his
yeah,
name confused because there's a Matt and a Mark. But if the little boy is Mark, then that is my favorite character in Salem's Lot.
yes, for sure. I also agree. Yeah, Revival I think about all the time. That is quite a book.
Is
Um,
that a King book?
yeah, it's one of his newer-ish ones, but like it was probably released like a decade ago now. But in the arc of his career, it feels new.
Yeah.
But that book is about so it's a guy telling his life story, and he is become like a washed-up musician, like a rock musician. It actually, I read it at a time where I was reading a lot of rock autobiographies, and it felt so like it felt like King was reading the same books that I was because it felt so much like one of those.
Oh,
But the
nice.
difference was when this guy was a kid, some like weird preacher came to his town and was kind of just like a strange dude. And there was like this incident where they kind of became irrevocably connected together. And he keeps seeing this preacher at odd times throughout his life. And like, something weird is going to happen and like creepy things are happening. And the ending of that book is just a slammer, just really good.
Oh, that sounds like a good one.
Yeah. So what I was going to ask before I shut down here was, what made you decide to pick up horror this year? Like, is it just that you've decided to try new genres and stuff, or?
So it's a little bit of a mix of being open-minded and wanting to try a lot of new genres rather than stick in the same lane. I think it's also the fact that you hear about Stephen King everywhere. Like
Right.
I'd never read anything by him, but I knew who he was. I'd heard him a lot, and that is a sign of a very popular person. Is when I wasn't interested in anything that he produced, but yeah, I was hearing about him a lot, and I heard about him all the time, to be honest. So I was like, I have to read a Stephen King book because I need to know what the hype is about, really. Not that I tend to like want to follow trends, but I also just want to know if something is hyped, I want to see why. And that was kind of the same with Akatar at the moment as well.
Right.
Um, but I think as well, as it got closer and closer to October, I was like, do I just for the lols, do I just read horror in October because it's very basic, it's very stereotypical? Do I just fill this month with reading horror? So I thought, yeah, let's do it. Let's read my Stephen King book, my first Stephen King book around the time of spooky season Halloween. And if that makes me generic, then that is me to a T. But I enjoyed it. I had a great time.
I don't think that makes you generic. Like, there's a reason that we all kind of get the vibes to read this at the same time of year, and like
Yeah.
Halloween's coming up and everything. Last year on Halloween, I had one of the most like memorable reading experiences of my life, because we had just moved into this house, and like, so we have this big, I don't know if you could see it, this like big open window here, but at the
Yeah.
time we didn't have blinds because we had just moved in. So I and it was like a neighborhood I'd never lived in. So it was Halloween. I could see outside, and I was reading this horror book called Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi, which is a really good book. I really liked it. And it's about these like boys getting possessed by like a devil
Oh
or a demon
no.
in the English countryside. And they're just like near the end of the book, they're like, like running through the snow and stuff. And they're just like, it's just very isolating. And I was just sitting here, and I could just see, like, I was like, whoever's outside could see me. And I was just like really creeped out. And my rabbits are right in this room. And one of them like thumped really hard because I was getting
Oh
freaked out.
no.
And it scared the ever living fuck out of me. Like, I literally jumped out of the couch. I was like, because I was
You've
just so,
literally just set the scene for a horror movie.
yeah, it was just so creepy.
God. No, see, I wouldn't be able to do that. If I'm reading a book, like if I'm reading a book in that environment, it needs to be lighthearted and it needs to be like not deep at all and not scary, nothing like that. Otherwise I won't read it.
Yeah, my wife has gotten mad at me a couple times because actually the ending of Revival I read, and then I was like laying in bed like right before bed, and I was just like, I need to turn the light on. And
Yeah.
she's like, why did you do this? And I knew she wasn't gonna read the book, so like I told her what happens at the end, and she was just like, that's why would you read that right before bed? And I'm like, I it was a
Rookie
mistake. Like,
mistake. See, and then it's like you played yourself because when a
yeah.
book starts to interfere with your dreams and potentially nightmares, that's when yeah, that's when you've made a big mistake.
hmm So you bought like a little set of Stephen King. It was Salem's Lot, The Shining. What were the other ones in there?
So in there as well, there is Doctor Sleep.
Mm.
There, which is that the sequel to The Shining? I'm pretty
Yeah, it
sure.
is.
I didn't want to read the blurb in case it spoiled anything from The Shining that I've
It
not read
it
yet.
absolutely will spoil The Shining, so don't
Okay,
read the blurb.
so
Yeah.
I haven't read it. Then there was Cujo in there as well, and then there was Firestarter. That was the other one
Okay.
that was in that
So
set.
four
Yeah.
good books and a bad book, but I won't tell you which one's which.
Oh, you're gonna make me read them all, and then I'm gonna say that the bad book is my favorite, and
Yeah,
then it's gonna
for
cause an
sure.
argument between us.
That's exactly what I'm setting up. I'm
Yeah.
thinking of the future. So last year I actually finished all of Stephen King's bibliography. Like, I had been putting it off for years and like doing like 2 or 3 a year. But the problem with doing that is that I saved most of his books that nobody reads till the end, and there's a reason why. Is that most of them weren't as
Mm,
good. So I decided to end with Pet Cemetery because I knew that was like a one that everybody like really liked, and I love Pet Cemetery. But before that, I read like 15 Stephen King books that I just thought were like okay or bad mostly.
Oh no, that's
Um,
such a shame because
and
then
I
it
was like,
ruins it for you.
yeah, I was like, do I even like this author? And then I read Pet Cemetery. I'm like, oh yeah, I do. Okay, yeah, no,
Yes, you need that book that's gonna remind you why you started reading him in the first place as
yeah.
well. Yeah.
What are some tropes when you're reading that you like specifically gravitate towards or like turn you off from the book entirely? Like, do you have like,
Tropes I gravitate towards. Oh, that's a difficult question. I'll have to think on that one. I can instantly say one that I hate,
okay,
which again is not I don't it's not been focused on in the majority of books that I've read recently just because that's not due to the storylines, but what again one of the tropes that's highly hyped online is enemies to lovers. I hate it. I hate it when enemies turn are you have you frozen again, Kyle? Hello. He might have done. Anyway, enemies to lovers, I absolutely cannot stand it. It is my least favorite trope of all time. Carl's gone again. Well, he's given me time to think about what my favorite trope might be. What are some ideas of tropes? I need to jog my memory. Oh, he's officially left the chat. Did Becky read any Sanderson? No, that's another author that I have never read and another one that I've heard so much about. And for some reason, I've been watching a lot of like book reviews on people reviewing Sanderson's work, even though I've never read anything by him as well. It's okay if you want to eat some Cheetos. No, I don't think we have Cheetos in the UK, which is such a shame because I could really do with them right now. If anybody's in the UK, let me know if I'm wrong and I'll go out and get some. Emily Henry. I bought my first Emily Henry book last week. And again, that's another author I've never read. I got Happy Place. Um, if they're a good author, then I can get over the enemies to lovers trope. Like if they do it well, if they do the storyline well, I can get over it. I won't be salty about it. But that's another one that I do want to read. Sanderson's not an author I'd recommend if you're looking for a laugh. And you know what? That's fine. It depends what mood I'm in. Maybe I don't want to laugh. I mean, to be fair, I've just read horror, so I probably could do with a laugh at this point. Favorite genres? I would have to say I like quite a lot, to be fair. I do like fantasy and I do like romantasy as well when people do it well, but I think that's an oversaturated one at the moment is kind of some romantasy books I feel like are maybe ruining fantasy a little bit, but that's a whole nother topic of conversation that I'm not going to get into here. Beach read was my first Emily Henry. Read Happy Place 3 years ago. Wound up binging her books. Okay, so that's a good sign of a good offer then. Library of a Viking is one that has good suggestions for those that don't like humor. Now, for some reason, I follow him on Instagram, but I have not subscribed to his YouTube, and I feel like it's about time I did because I'm always interested when he puts something on one of his stories. Yeah, I like to have a good mix of different genres. Like I like to switch it up quite a lot. So, like I said, this year has been very heavy on the fantasy, but then I do like to add like a romance in there every so often or like a horror. And one genre that I do want to get into a little bit more is sci-fi because I don't really feel like I've read much sci-fi at all. I mean, we mentioned earlier that Frankenstein probably would have been classed as a sci-fi if it was released now, but if anybody has any good sci-fi recommendations or for like a beginner, then that would be really appreciated because I think that's probably going to be on my list for 2025 reading. Don't enjoy a group of people with simple problems that could be worked out, but they can't slash won't communicate. I completely agree with you. I hate that trope as well. That is so frustrating when people just don't talk. And it's literally a simple thing that if you just talk to each other, you could solve it in about 5 minutes. And they just don't. That happens in TV programs a lot. And that really annoys me every time. You literally just want to scream at the TV. I like humor. I just don't like Sanderson's humor. Interesting. That's fair. Are fantasy and romantasy really two different genres? Well, I don't know. See, I'm the only romantasy that I feel like I've read is by Sarah J. Maas, which is ACOTAR, and then I'm also kind of midway through the Throne of Glass series. But I would say that's a little bit more on the fantasy side rather than romantasy. But I think my issue with ACOTAR was that like she started off wanting to be fantasy, and she started off creating this world that looked like it had potential, and then she just focused on like the two people just going at it all the time in every single chapter, and I was a bit like, can you tone down the spice so that we can learn more about the world? That was my thing. That was only my thing about Akatar. Oh, there's so many recommendations here. Oh, Carl said we're going to end it, but feel free to answer questions if you want. Well, I might give it, I don't know, another 5 minutes or so. Can I end this live stream? I'm not even the owner of it. can can have my channel. Yeah, I'm taking over Kyle's channel. This is read by Becky now. You should subscribe to me and him at the same time, because then it'll be like I'm being subscribed to twice. Only Kyle can end it. Sir, if you leave, it will end. Okay, cool. Um, well, that's great. I don't want to take over Kyle's stream, but it was so nice to be on here and to waffle for a nice hour in my evening. And I'm going to write down a lot of those sci-fi recommendations because there's actually so many in there, and that's really helpful. So thank you very much. And yeah, have a good rest of your day. Thanks for having me, Kyle. Appreciate it. And we'll catch up again at some point soon. Bye.
You know, I didn't consider the fact that I can just log in on my phone. But anyway, sorry this happened, everybody. I will reschedule with Becky when my internet is regular, and we will have a stream that isn't constantly interrupted by this stuff. And you can't win them all. The stream is still live, Becky, and I figured out that I would go on my phone to edit it. But you live and you learn. Becky, I want to thank you for coming on. Sorry you had to go through all this, but you did really good holding it down while I was dealing with this. So bye, everybody. I'm going to actually end this stream now.